Desire does not appear from nowhere. Kama does not arise because objects are attractive. It arises because you feel incomplete without them. This sense of incompleteness has a name, apoornatva, the felt sense of being insufficient, inadequate, somehow less than what you should be. It is not a philosophical abstraction. It is the low, persistent hum underneath ordinary life, the feeling that things would finally be right if one more condition were met. The ego, ahankara, believes with complete conviction that acquiring the right object or experience will close this gap and deliver the fullness, purnatvam, that is missing. This belief rests on a fatal arithmetic. The ego takes itself to be a finite, limited entity. It then adds finite objects to itself, achievements, relationships, possessions, pleasures, and expects the sum to be infinite and permanent satisfaction. But finite plus finite can never equal infinite. Each fulfillment delivers a brief interruption in the sense of lack. Not its removal. The lack returns, and with it a new round of kama directed at a new object. The cycle does not end because the premise is wrong. The problem was never that you lacked the right things. The problem is the belief that you lack anything at all. The fuel for this entire machinery is rajoguna, the quality of restless energy, activity, and passion that drives the mind outward in constant search. Rajoguna does not allow the mind to rest in itself. It pushes toward the next stimulus, the next acquisition, the next validation. This is why kama never arrives satisfied. The moment one desire is met, Rajoguna generates the next. The ego under apoornatva operates identically. No amount of acquired fullness changes what the ego takes itself to be, limited, contingent, and perpetually at risk of losing what it has gathered. Desire is not a problem of appetite. It is a problem of mistaken identity. This also explains why the sequence begins exactly where it does, with dwelling on an object. You dwell on an object because you have already decided, at some level, that it can give you what you lack. The dwelling itself is the first sign of apoornatva at work. By the time kama becomes krodha and krodha collapses into samoha, the root has been active for a long time. The explosion at the end is not the problem. It is the most visible symptom of a much older and quieter confusion about who you are. Managing the symptoms, withstanding the vega, controlling the outburst, is necessary but not sufficient. You are arresting a consequence while the cause continues operating. Understanding apoornatva as the root changes what you are managing toward. The question stops being, how do I control this desire? And becomes, is the sense of lack I am trying to fill actually real? That question runs directly into objections most people carry without examining. That some desires are healthy, that some anger is justified, that not all kama is the enemy. Those distinctions need to be made precisely before the practical path forward can be seen clearly. The objection surfaces naturally. If kama is the root of such destruction, must a person hollow themselves out entirely? No ambitions, no goals, no standards worth defending? And if anger occasionally produces results, why not keep it available as an instrument? Both objections rest on the same unexamined assumption, that the person is in charge. Vedanta does not declare all desire an enemy. The Sanskrit phrase dharma aviruddha kama, desire that does not conflict with ethics, names this explicitly. The desire for liberation, for one's children's well-being, for honest work done well, these are not the problem. What makes a desire binding is not its object, but its grip. The difference is precise. A preference says, I would like this to happen. A binding desire says, I cannot be at peace unless this happens. The first leaves the intellect intact. The second has already begun clouding it, before any obstacle has appeared. The clouding does not begin with the obstruction. It begins the moment the preference hardens into a requirement. The question is never, do I have this desire, but does this desire have me? The argument that anger is a legitimate tool, useful for managing a business, enforcing discipline, drawing firm lines, is one Vedanta takes seriously rather than dismisses. The resolution is not that anger is always wrong. The resolution is that a tool is only a tool if you can pick it up and put it down at will. A hammer left in your hand, driving nails you did not choose to drive, is no longer your tool. It is your master. For the ajnani, the person who has not yet seen through the equation of self-worth with outcomes, anger cannot be a tool because the prerequisite for tool use is mastery, and mastery requires standing apart from the instrument. When the body shakes, the voice rises without decision, and the mind is already 3 sentences into the argument before any choice was made. That person is not wielding a tool. The tool is wielding them. This distinction also resolves the more sympathetic version of the objection. Righteous indignation. When someone acts unjustly, surely anger is not merely appropriate but required. Vedanta's answer is not that the injustice doesn't matter. It is that krodha, defined strictly as the obstructed energy of thwarted desire, carries its guna signature regardless of the cause that triggered it. Rajoguna does not become sattva because the provocation was real. The agitation that clouds the intellect clouds it the same way, whether the anger is justified or not. Clouded judgment, even in service of a just cause, produces the wrong action at the wrong moment in the wrong proportion. Someone orders your coffee wrong, and the rage feels proportional to that event. It is not. What the trigger does is release what was already compressed, the simmering prior anguish, the accumulated unresolved karma from 100 earlier obstructions was already present. The wrong coffee order was the excuse it needed to surface. This is why the same situation produces volcanic anger in one person and mild irritation in another. The external event is constant. The internal pressure is the variable. Believing otherwise keeps attention permanently fixed on external circumstances, making the actual source impossible to address. The practical implication is the same across all 3 clarifications. The work is internal, not situational. One does not solve binding desire by acquiring the object, manage anger by changing the person who provoked it, or achieve righteous indignation by finding a cause worthy of fury. The intellect is either clear or it is not, and desire and anger are what cloud it. Knowing this does not require eliminating all preferences. It requires seeing which preferences have crossed the line from desire into insistent demand, and recognizing that the moment they do, judgment is already compromised. The enemy sits in the senses, mind, and intellect, the very instruments you need to see clearly. Knowing this changes the strategy entirely. The common instinct is to go directly at the anger, suppress it, redirect it, breathe through it. But this misses the structure of the problem. Anger is not a root, it is a symptom. It is desire that has hit a wall. Managing anger without touching the underlying karma, the binding expectation that was thwarted, is treating fever by cooling the thermometer. The reading changes, the infection remains. The work has 2 stages. The first is immediate. The second is deeper. In the immediate stage, the task is to withstand the vega, the impulsive pressure the emotion generates in the body and nervous system. When desire is obstructed, the resulting force does not stay in the mind. It moves into the muscles, the breath, the voice, the hands, the shaking, the raised voice, the locked jaw. These are signs that the vega has already moved downstream. At this stage, the discriminative intellect is functionally offline. No argument, no reflection, no teaching can land. The only job is to prevent the emotion from translating into destructive action, not to resolve it, just to interrupt the momentum between the internal surge and the external act. The senses are the outermost gate. When they encounter an object tied to a strong karma, they pull the mind outward before the intellect can intervene. Indriya nigraha, sense restraint, is not about shutting sensation down. It is about creating a small gap between contact and reaction, enough that the intellect can re-enter the process. That gap is the entire work of the first stage. A pressure cooker shows what happens when this gap is absent. The sealed vessel, the heat building, the steam with nowhere to go, and then the explosion. The vessel is the mind-body system. The heat is the blocked desire. The explosion is what happens when vega has nowhere to exit except through destructive action. The safety valve is the moment of withstanding, the deliberate pause that keeps the pressure from becoming the outcome. The first stage only buys time. Once the immediate force has been withstood, the second stage becomes possible, tracing the anger back to the expectation that produced it. This is where the intellect earns its function. Anger does not arise from a person or a situation. It arises from a specific internal expectation that met an obstacle. Someone spoke harshly and you became angry, but the anger did not originate in their words. It originated in a comma you were carrying before they spoke. The expectation of being treated with respect, of being seen a certain way, of the situation going a particular direction. Their behavior was the wall the desire ran into. The anger is the sound of the collision. Once you can see the expectation, I needed this, and I did not get it. You are working at the actual adhisthana, the seat of the problem, not its surface. The question becomes, is this expectation itself examined? Was it ever reasonable? What did it rest on? This is not a counsel of passive acceptance. Objective action, clear, measured, effective, remains entirely available from this position. Anger as a base for action produces the impulsive self-destruction described earlier. Clarity as a base produces something else entirely. Managing the senses, withstanding the vega, locating the underlying expectation. These three moves do not dissolve the root of kama. The sense of incompleteness that generated the binding desire is still present.